What do Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, Michael Bay, and Alfred Hitchcock have in common? Not too much, admittedly, but they have all released at least one movie they aren't too proud of. Here's this week's list.
How are you holding up under the pressure of delivering this incredible movie to a very enthusiastic fan base?
Not well. It's not good.
Age of Ultron, Joss Whedon changed cinema with the Avengers. The ensemble film brought a host of disparate superheroes together, and in the process made over $1.5 billion at the box office. Balancing all those characters was tough, and come the sequel, Age of Ultron, the director was worn down. Whedon apparently couldn't muster the ability to watch the entire film after completion, saying, "I'm tired and I had a terrible time." A year later, in 2016, the filmmaker clarified his comments. "I was so beaten down by the process. Some of that was conflicting with Marvel, which is inevitable. A lot of it was about my own work, and I was also exhausted." Whedon added that he remains proud of the film, yet there are still things about the film that frustrate him hugely.
Let's say loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation. Apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
Every scene is so action-filled that the movie does all of the thinking and emoting for us, and you just sit there looking at dazzling effects, yes, but you still feel bored.
There's no real interest in the Batman and Robin characters. It's always the villains.
Yeah.
And these villains are not really up there with Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, Tommy Lee Jones.
Joel Schumacher, Batman and Robin, this is often cited as one of the worst superhero movies ever made, and even director Joel Schumacher knows better than to try and defend it. In a June 2017 interview with Vice, the filmmaker said he was sorry for the film, saying he owed every Batman fan an apology and that it was his fault for the movie's many missteps. "No one is responsible for my mistakes but me," he said. Jay Boyer of Orlando Sentinel believes Batman and Robin to be the least distinctive chapter in the series, calling it a bat smorgasbord of action, camp, pathos, spectacle and whatever, and blaming its blandness on the studio's increased involvement in its production. In his thumbs-down review, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times found the film to be wonderful to look at, although it had nothing authentic at its core, criticizing its toyetic approach. Writing for the Chicago Tribune, Gene Siskel, who gave positive reviews to the previous Batman films, also gave Batman and Robin a thumbs-down rating, calling it a sniggering, exhausting, overproduced extravaganza. Alfred Hitchcock, Rope. This was one of Alfred Hitchcock's most ambitious undertakings, as he attempted to present the film as if it was one continuous shot in real time. The narrative trick put extra pressure on the production, and even the master of suspense felt the final result was too bloated. He called Rope an experiment that didn't work out. Star James Stewart also did not enjoy the film. Two brilliant young aesthetes, Brandon Shaw and Philip Morgan, strangled to death their former classmate from prep school, David Kentley, in their Manhattan penthouse apartment. They commit the crime as an intellectual exercise. They want to prove their superiority by committing the perfect murder. Roger Ebert wrote in 1984, Alfred Hitchcock called Rope an experiment that didn't work out, and he was happy to see it kept out of release for most of 3 decades, but went on to say that Rope remains one of the most interesting experiments ever attempted by a major director working with big box office names, and it's worth seeing. David Fincher, Alien 3, "No one hated it more than me. To this day, no one hates it more than me," Fincher infamously said about Alien 3. The director and 20th Century Fox had a fraught relationship during production, with Fincher calling the making of the movie a baptism by fire. Fincher was not an established auteur at the time, and his obsession with detail and his multiple-take shooting strategy angered the studio so much that they wanted to remove him. Part of the problem was that Fincher started production without a finished script and only had 5 weeks to prepare. As Fincher told journalist Mark Berman, "A lot of times we were fitting scenes into sets that we had already constructed. It was not the optimum way to make a movie." Woody Allen, Annie Hall. Annie Hall is often credited as Woody Allen's greatest achievement, but the director is hardly a fan of his 4-time Oscar winner. He told Collider that he was disappointed with the film as it did communicate his original vision to the audience. While Allen sought to make a stream of consciousness film, instead all he got people to care about was the relationship between the characters played by Diane Keaton and himself. The film was supposed to be what happens in a guy's mind, and you were supposed to see a stream of consciousness in his mind, and I did the film and it was completely incoherent, Allen said. Nobody understood anything that went on, and the relationship between myself and Diane Keaton was all anyone cared about. That was not what I cared about. That was one small part of another big canvas that I had. In the end, I had to reduce the film to just me and Diane Keaton, and that relationship, so I was quite disappointed in that movie. Stanley Kubrick, Fear and Desire. Fear and Desire is a 1952 American anti-war film, written by Howard Sackler. With a production team of only 15 people, the film was Kubrick's featured directorial debut. Though the film is not about any specific war, it was produced and released during the height of the Korean War. Stanley Kubrick's first feature was hardly his proudest moment. The director, who had previously gained attention as a photographer for Life magazine, ran into trouble blocking certain scenes and keeping continuity consistent during filming. He later called the movie a bumbling amateur film exercise because of the shooting errors and famously tried to prevent people from seeing it by purchasing the original negatives. To reduce production costs, Kubrick had intended to make it a silent picture, but in the end the adding of sounds, effects, and music brought the production over budget to around $53,000, and had to be bailed out by producer Richard de Rochemont, on condition that he help in de Rochemont's production of a 5-part program about Abraham Lincoln for the educational TV series Omnibus, filmed on location in Hodgenville, Kentucky. Kubrick also ran into difficulty in editing a key scene where one of the soldiers throws a plate of beans to the floor and enters the frame from the wrong side. Kubrick's blocking of the crucial scene was faulty, and his actors accidentally crossed the so-called stage line. This required the negative to be flipped in the printing process to preserve continuity, which was another expense. Michael Bay, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Critics hated the first Transformers sequel, and so did Michael Bay, for the most part. The director admitted to Empire that he made some mistakes on the movie and that the final product was crap. He blamed the writer's strike that took place as part of the reason the movie failed, as the script was not in its most shootable form by the time production started. "We made some mistakes. The real fault with Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen is that it ran into a mystical world," he said. "When I look back at it, that was crap. The writer's strike was coming hard and fast. It was just terrible to do a movie where you've got to have a story in 3 weeks. I was prepping a movie for months where I only had 14 pages of some idea of what the movie was. It's a BS way to make a movie." Dennis Hopper, Catch Fire. Hopper already had 4 features under his belt as a director by the time he signed on for Catch Fire, in which he starred opposite Jodie Foster. The script was affected by the 1988 Writers Guild of America strike, and Hopper was still issuing script rewrites during the actual production. He battled the studio in the editing room as his original 3-hour cut was edited down into a scant 98 minutes. Hopper eventually removed his name from the movie, and it was released under the pseudonym Alan Smithee. The title was even changed to Backtrack. Kiefer Sutherland, Woman Wanted. Woman Wanted is notable for being the last film to be released using the Alan Smithee pseudonym. The fake name was the official pseudonym used by the Directors Guild of America for projects in which a director wanted his name removed. Smithee was discontinued in 2000 shortly after the release of Woman Wanted. It is based on a novel by Joanna Glass, who also wrote the screenplay. It stars Sutherland, Holly Hunter, Michael Moriarty, and Sutherland's mother, Shirley Douglas. The story is about a woman, Holly Hunter, who works as a housekeeper for a widower, Michael Moriarty, and his adult son, Kiefer Sutherland. The film won Best Independent Feature Film at the Ajijik International Film Festival, as well as Best Feature Film at the Slamdunk Film Festival. Steven Soderberg, The Underneath. Following the well-reviewed King of the Hill, Soderberg stumbled with this remake of the 1949 noir film. The director told the Criterion Collection the movie was dead on arrival and that his heart wasn't in it, as he was forced to direct while battling personal issues in his life that distracted him from paying proper attention to the feature. That was our show for today. What did you think? Did you like any of the movies shown here? What was your least favorite movie? Do you know of any other directors who didn't like their own films? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise in the comments below. Until next time, this is Andrew in for Kevin Gibbon saying live long and prosper. May the force be with you and keep reaching for the stars.